For as long as we can remember, we've been told this one simple story. Our genes are our destiny, right? That we're handed this fixed, unchangeable blueprint at birth. If disease runs in your family, well, you're just waiting your turn. But what if that entire story is wrong? What if you could actually pick up a pen and become the editor of your own biological script? Okay, let's get into it. This idea right here, it's at the very heart of one of the most exciting fields in biology today, epigenetics. Seriously, this is a revolution in thinking that completely hands the power back to you. It proves that your daily choices are in a constant conversation with your DNA. Now, to really appreciate just how big of a deal this is, we first have to understand the old myth we're leaving behind. This whole idea that our genetic fate is sealed the moment we're born. The old way of thinking was super simple, and let's be honest, kind of depressing. DNA is destiny, you get what you get, and that's it. But the new science, it paints a totally different picture. It says your DNA is more like a committee of possibilities. And guess what? You're the chairman, and you get to call the shots. See, this old belief was built on something called the central dogma of biology, and it was a strict one-way street. DNA makes RNA, RNA makes protein, and those proteins make you. In that version of the story, you're just the final product coming off an assembly line that you have absolutely no control over. It basically created a sense of biological helplessness. And then, the Human-Genome-Project happened. Scientists went in expecting to find, over 100,000 genes to explain how complex we are. Instead, they found only about 20,000. To put that into perspective for you, that's about the same number of genes as a tiny, microscopic worm. This discovery just blew everyone's mind and left science with this massive, hanging question. If we're working with the same number of parts as a worm, how in the world are we so different? Clearly, the number of genes couldn't be the whole story. The answer, as it turns out, wasn't in the genes themselves, but in how they were being used. And that, right there, brings us to this star of our show, epigenetics. This is the science that finally explains how we get all of this incredible complexity from what is, really, a surprisingly simple set of instructions. So, the formal definition of epigenetics literally means above or on top of genetics. It's this whole other layer of control sitting on top of your DNA, and its job is to tell your genes when to turn on and when to turn off, all without ever changing the actual DNA code itself. Okay, the scientific definition is a good place to start, but what does that actually mean for you and me? Let's break it down with a super simple analogy. I want you to think of your DNA like the electrical wiring that's built into the walls of a house. That wiring is fixed, right? It's permanent. But your epigenome, that's the giant control panel of light switches and dimmer dials in every single room. You're the one walking around the house, deciding which rooms get lit up and just how brightly. So how do these light switches actually work inside our bodies? Well, it mainly comes down to two key mechanisms. Let's pop the hood and take a look. Okay, first up is something called DNA methylation. The easiest way to think about this is like a tiny chemical do not disturb sign. When a little tag called a methyl group latches onto a gene, it physically blocks your body's machinery from reading it. Long story short, methylation silences genes. It turns them off. The second major mechanism is histone-modification. Your DNA is incredibly long, so to fit inside your cells, it's wrapped around these protein spools called histones. Now, if the DNA is wrapped really, really tightly, those genes are hidden away and turned off. But if it's wound loosely, the genes are exposed and ready for action. They get turned on. This is like the volume dial for your genes. All right, so here's the most important question of all. Who or what is controlling all these switches and dials? The answer is incredible. It's you. Your daily lifestyle choices, your environment. They are the architects of your epigenome. You know, the absolute best proof of this comes from studies on identical twins. They start life with literally 100% identical DNA. But let's say one twin smokes and lives on junk food, while the other exercises and eats healthy. By the time they're 50, their health can be worlds apart. Their DNA code is still the same, but their epigenomes have been completely reshaped by their choices. Your daily life is just a constant stream of information being fed to your genes. The foods you eat, like leafy greens, provide the raw materials for those methyl tags that can silence harmful genes. On the flip side, chronic stress can actually strip those protective tags away, turning on genes related to inflammation. And get this, even a single workout can immediately change the epigenetic markers on your metabolism genes. It's happening in real time. Okay, now this is where the story gets really, really deep. These epigenetic changes you make, they don't necessarily stop with you. They can actually be passed down, creating an echo that can ripple through generations. One of the most tragic but powerful examples of this is the Dutch hunger winter back in 1944. Women who were pregnant during this terrible famine had children who, decades later, showed much higher rates of things like obesity and diabetes. But here's the real shocker. The grandchildren of those women, people who never experienced the famine themselves, also had higher rates of disease. The trauma their grandmother experienced had left an epigenetic mark that was passed down. So what does all this mean for us, right here, right now? It means that whole story about genetic helplessness is officially over. It's time to pick up the pencil. This is the ultimate takeaway. This is what it all boils down to. You are not just a passive victim of the DNA you happen to inherit. You are the active editor, constantly highlighting, underlining, and changing the expression of your biological story with every single choice you make. And you can start editing today. Seriously. Eating foods like spinach, avocado, and beets gives your body the tools it needs to silence genes you don't want active. Managing your stress with something like meditation isn't just a mental exercise, it's actual biological maintenance for your epigenome. And just moving your body, that actively remodels your genes for better health. So just forget that old idea of a fixed blueprint. You are a work in progress, and you hold the power to influence your own health and maybe even the legacy you pass on. The script is yours. So what kind of story are you going to write?